Next up is a conversation that I had with the legendary activist in her own right, Victoria Cruz, about her legendary friend, Marsha P. Johnson. That's coming up right now. 2020 has been a rough year, but it's not all bad. We're still here to witness the 75th anniversary of the birth of Marsha P. Johnson, which occurred on Monday. The legendary organizer is an icon in our community to so many here in the United States and around the world. From her role at Stonewall to her activism to her performance art, she continues to inspire so many. But she was a real person. That's why I'm thrilled to be joined today by Victoria Cruz, who is a legendary activist in her own right, an anti-violence advocate, and a longtime friend of Marsha P. Johnson. Her pursuit of justice for her friend Marsha P. Johnson is the subject of the Netflix documentary, The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm so deeply grateful.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having this icon memorized in such a way that we need to know more about her.
Thank you so much. Yeah, what's been so great about this week is there have been so many remembrances of her online, there was a big rally. So it's big, but it needs to be way bigger. And that's why we're so happy to talk to you. I'm wondering if you could just take us back to, early 70s, mid 70s New York. Can you just tell us about your friend, Marsha P. Johnson? What would be the first thing that we would notice about her if we saw her, and what drew you to her as a friend?
Well, Marsha was ahead of her time. At the time, during the 60s and early 70s, it was like unheard of having trans women. As a matter of fact, the word trans didn't exist at the time. They were calling them transsexuals or things like that. Names that did not pertain to how we identified. And she was ahead of her time. She dressed the way she wanted to dress, whether it was male or female, but she considered herself female. Actually, if you saw the movie, Randy Wicker presented her as a saint. To me, she was the Rosa Parks of our movement, and a saint also because Marsha was very giving, very friendly, very open, didn't want violence or trouble. She was a peacemaker, but she knew what the prize was. People would say, oh, she's kind of ditzy or she's got mental health. No, no, no. Marsha knew what she wanted and how to get it.
What do you think inspired her to be able to be ahead of her time? That's kind of more than courage. You have to be motivated by something that is even bigger than yourself to stand out like that and to face all that she faced at that time. What do you think drove her to express herself as herself?
She was herself, and nobody could take that away from her. Meeting Sylvia, who was exactly the opposite. Well, Marsha was very friendly, very outgoing, very giving. But Sylvia was in your face and very vocal about what she wanted. And they matched. They completed that person. Marsha was always herself. She didn't care whether she had a blonde wig, a gown on with sneakers, and she just dressed the way she wanted to dress. She wanted to be herself and was comfortable at it. She would get up on the train to New York City as a man, and when she got over there on the Christopher Street station, she was Marsha. She got dressed on the train, and people found that odd, but she did what she wanted to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I heard a 19-year-old the other day say a very similar thing, that they have a similar experience. It's so interesting that in so many ways that that seems like a long time ago for so many, but the experiences that she had, that you all had in your life, is still being lived out by a lot of young people. So she's, I mean, it's a long time ago, but it's also still very now.
Yeah, that's true. Back then, it was against the law to get dressed up in women's clothes. You were arrested, you were taken in prison, you were
Wow.
taken to jail, and when you went to court, they would drop the cases, but you spend the night in jail and in horrible conditions also because you were made fun at, you were hit, you were mocked, you were belittled. You weren't considered a person.
I'm wondering if, what do you think? So, in some ways, we're talking about the ways in which things are the same experientially for some people, but how dramatically they've changed in terms of the example that you just gave us right now. I'm wondering if Marsha was here, what do you think that she would think about where we are and what's happened since 1970s New York being trans in 1970s New York? What do you think she would make of right now?
She would be very upset that we've won many battles and many legal rights for our community, but at the same time, transgender rights in our community have not been fulfilled. We're still treated as a second class citizen or at the bottom of the barrel in the community.
Yeah, yeah, and still, killed at a really epic rate. Aside from where we are in the community, what do you think that she would think of the way that people see her now, the way in which, as you say, she's portrayed as a saint, the fact that there have been documentaries about her and movies about her and people do art about her and there's an institute that's named after her. What do you think that she would think about how people see her now?
She would be very honored, and at the same time, she would be humbled that we think so much of her. But she was a trailblazer at the time that, we needed trailblazers like her and Sylvia.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that would be, I sometimes hope that somewhere she knows that she is, she is seen that way. Um, all these years later, um, you still have so much love for her. It's so apparent. And that love is profound. And that your love for your friends has propelled you to seek justice in her death and how she died. And I'm wondering if you can just tell us about, for you, Victoria, as a person who knows her, as her friend, what that looks like. What does justice for you look like in the death of Marsha P. Johnson?
Well, justice for Marsha would be giving us our human rights. Transgender rights are human rights. Okay, it happened such a long time ago, and justice as far as people being held accountable for what happened to her, 20, some of the people who have committed maybe that crime, because she was murdered, maybe they are no longer with us. So justice would mean giving us human rights. Transgender rights are only human rights, not only civil rights, but human rights. And we need to have that. And we're losing that in this country, especially with who's in the White House now.
100%. Yeah.
I can give you an example of Marsha. Like people said, oh, well, she's kind of ditzy mental health. No. But she knew what she wanted, and she did it in a way subtle, but comical. She was wonderful. You wanted to be around her because she would say right now, like for instance, this draft dodger in the White House 5 times, heel spurs. He claimed that he couldn't go into the service. Well, Marsha would say, well, what kind of heels was he wearing? And then Sylvia, who was outspoken and in your face, she would say, well, I heard he likes to get slapped and peed on, so it must have been a cheap pair of spikes. That's the way they complimented each other.
Yeah, I heard this in speaking about their complementarity, these two legends. I heard, I saw this tape from Sylvia, who said that she often suffered tremendous bouts of depression, deep depression, where she couldn't get out of bed for days. And that the only person who was able to pull her out of bed, the only person that she would answer the door when they knocked, trying to figure out what happened to her, was Marsha.
Yes, like after that fiasco at Washington Square Park on 73, where Sylvia was booed off stage for only doing the right thing and wanting the help from the community. She felt that the community just abandoned her, and she went home and slashed herself. If it wasn't for Marsha, Sylvia would have not been with us. Because Sylvia slashed her wrist, and it was Marsha who found her and took her to the hospital.
Wow.
They had a love affair as sisters and complimented each other as friends.
Well, that's a lesson for all of us. What you're talking about is 1973 at the end of the Gay Rights March, or the Gay Rights Rally
in Washington Square Park.
Washington Square Park, where that was the moment when trans women were pushed out of the LGBTQ movement, when Sylvia Rivera was booed off the stage, and they no longer really allowed trans women to have a role in that. I'm just letting our audience know about that.
Yes, and in the first Pride March that we had back in 70s, they wanted the transgender people to go to the back of the parade. Sylvia, Marsha, and all of us said, no, we are not. We fought for this right, and we're going. Well, what happened was ultimately that we gathered throughout the whole entire parade. We didn't have a trans contingent. We had all the girls were all over the place because we would not go to the back like they wanted us to march.
Well, that's the kind of prides we need to have on from now on, is to be all over the place and not segregated. Lastly, I'm just wondering if you could tell us, what do you think would be Marsha's advice to now what would be her trans children and now trans grandchildren? What do you think would be her advice to those who have come after her?
Like she said in the movie, like she says all the time, we have to be good to one another. We have to take care of one another. During that time, Marsha would receive her grant from public assistance on Friday. By Monday, she had no money. Do you know what she did with that money? She bought food. She bought clothing for those who need it. So did Sylvia. And we have to take care of one another. We have to stop this bickering between one another, who's prettier, who's got bigger breasts, who's got bigger this, who's got more hair. We have to stop that and take care of one another as human beings, as sisters and brothers. She said that herself. We have to take care of one another. We have to be good to one another. We have to support one another. When Sylvia was passing away, she asked me, please try to keep the community together. And I have tried, but it's not easy. There's always somebody in the audience who's going to disrupt it and try to take over. If they put that energy into studying unity, you know how far we would have gotten so far? But we're not practicing unity. Right now, you got these corporations coming out once a year, marching in the gay pride movement with their boys' toys, and not how do you call it? Not giving jobs. You have these banks, these corporations, not giving jobs to women of color, trans women of color. Yet they show up once a year with their boy toys and these marching in the parade. No, put your money where your mouth is, not once a year. Give us a job. Give us medical coverage where we don't have to depend on the government to support us in our medical needs.
Well, on that note of unity and guiding us to come together and for us to not be used as tokens, but to make sure that we are able to have our rightful place in society and get the things that we're owed. I want to in this interview, I think it's a great place to bring to a close this conversation. I could keep talking to you for the rest of the hour, but we don't, I unfortunately can't. But I want to just thank you again for joining us and to communicate, I know on behalf of our community, that we thank you personally and we honor you. And we honor you for fighting for the memory of your friend, your sister friend, Marsha P. Johnson. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me express my views on this subject. But we need
Listen,
to keep the community together because there's power in numbers, and we have the numbers.
there's power.
Allies.
There's power in numbers. That was and still is very much so Victoria Cruz, the legendary activist in her own right, longtime anti-violence activist, and friend of Marsha P. Johnson. This is Lives at Stake. We'll be right back.